Hi everybody, it's Michelle here at Solo in Canada, Musings from Midlife. And today the topic of discussion is traveling while solo. There are also many people who might be new to traveling in midlife. And maybe they didn't have that much experience when they were younger. Or maybe it is that they are newly solo and they always went on trips with other people. And they actually never did a trip on their own. So there's a wide variety of experiences here. So I guess today that I'm talking to the person who is kind of venturing out for the first time and doing stuff that they've done before with other people, but they've never done it themselves. And please, if you don't mind, don't forget to like and subscribe to this video, because I am trying to get my videos, shown to my target audience of people over 50, and it's all up to the Google gods whether they do it or not. If they see more likes and more subscribes, then they assume that the content is educational or valued, and therefore they might push my videos out to the rest of the people out there in internet land. So travel is wonderful though, and I know so many people who have said that they never regretted going on their trip. Most trips end up turning out to be unexpected, with different turns that happen along the way that you could never pre-plan. And there's a wide variety of ways to travel. Some people, they do slow travel, meaning that they might be gone for 4 to 8 weeks when they do travel, and they're going slowly, just moving from place to place leisurely, often not staying in tourist locations, often staying in, more sort of joining in with the locals and living kind of a local lifestyle and sitting in the cafes with the locals, not the tourists, and immersing themselves in the language and the lifestyle of wherever they might be located. They're probably looking for a more economical way of traveling, so they might be doing it by camper van, or they might be staying at Airbnbs, which offer reduced rates. If you are staying for a long period of time, like a month, you get a discount. And then there's other people who might be, be gone for a long period of time and finding cheap ways to get from place to place, hopping on ships and hopping on trains and buses, and you feel very comfortable with what you're doing. There's lots of books out there for people who are doing slow travel, so I'm not addressing that. I'm addressing the person who is really feeling like their life is getting just a little bit on the boring side, because they're staying in their regular life and they're just trying to survive, really, as a solo person, just, fitting in their work and their social events. But they really feel like they just want to have a few adventures. And I remember at some point when I first entered into midlife thinking, have all my big adventures already happened? Maybe it's not important to you, that's fine. But if you are one of those people who would like to keep traveling, but you're not quite sure how you're going to do it now that you're on your own, there are many options available to you. So I kind of divide travelers into 3 camps. The first one I already mentioned, the experienced veteran traveler. They don't think a single thing about picking up and going off on their own. It doesn't even occur to them to look around to see if they could find a travel partner. It's not in their mindset. Camp 2, I think, is the person who they want to travel, but they're afraid. They don't have anybody to travel with. And so because of that, they've decided that they're just going to wait it out in hopes that down the road they'll meet somebody that wouldn't mind traveling with them, because the thought of going out on their own is very scary. And then there's the third camp, and those are the people who are solo. They definitely plan to travel. They are not going to shut down that part of their life just because they're not partnered now, even though for, in the past they assumed that they would be partnered. They find themselves unexpectedly not partnered, and they have nobody to travel with, but they flat out refuse to stop them from traveling, and they are looking for options, so how they can find people to travel with. So I'm addressing Camp 2 and Camp 3. So when I first was on my own, I knew that I wanted to have these adventures, but I didn't feel comfortable. So for me, I did several trips kind of on my own, and I also did several trips with other people. When I went with family, I had a great time. So yes, I was by myself in life, but I was going with family. And so some people were in partners and some people weren't, but we were family. So it didn't impact things. I was very fortunate to have opportunities to travel. And in fact, I have two sisters, and we decided to start up Sisters Travel, and we've gone on a couple of trips together. We did one trip in San Francisco and drove through Napa Valley, and we did another trip in Quebec City, and we had a great 3-day weekend in Quebec City. It was a lot of fun. So that was me living solo but not traveling solo. Then I had a few opportunities where I knew I wanted to go away. I had nobody to travel with, but I had saved up enough money to be able to pay for a trip, and I decided I was just going to suck it up and go. I had a couple of hesitations. I'm not worried about traveling down to the airport, getting on the plane, and then finding my way to the hotels or wherever I've booked, because I've done that so many times over my life that I feel very comfortable doing that. Instead, the hesitation for me was, would I be lonely? Because I was worried that I was going to spend a lot of money for this trip, which was going to be a bit of a financial sacrifice for me. And then in the end, only kind of have it was okay trip. So I was worried more about not having the companionship to share the memories and the experiences with as they happen. The other area where I felt a little uncomfortable was going to a restaurant to eat by myself. I have no problems going into a bakery or a grocery store and just picking up some fresh food and eating it, just sitting at a picnic table at the park. But when I was going on these trips, I wanted to experience, the enjoyment of the restaurants and being out in the squares with the people and experiencing a little bit of the nightlife. And I couldn't really envision how I was going to do that and feel safe to be out in the evenings by myself. So the first thing I did was I did tons of research. And I know some people just like to fly by the seat of their pants. That's not me. That made me feel better. The more I knew about the place I was going to, the less anxiety I felt about going by myself. For me, in fact, I spent more on shelter than most would. Because I didn't feel comfortable doing an Airbnb, I didn't want to be kind of just on the edge of town. I wanted to be right downtown. I wanted to be close to all of the things that I thought I was going to do and see while there, or close to the transportation hubs, depending on the place where I was going. So for me, I put more money into my hotels so that I could stay at quality, kind of a little more on the luxurious side hotel. That alleviated my stress. And I felt it was worth it. It's worth the money to pay where you feel comfortable. I had a few trips on my own like that. I went out to Vancouver by myself, had a great time, have a lot of memories from that trip. It was wonderful. So for the third group, who are people who are really guaranteeing themselves that they will continue to travel, but are trying to figure out how they're going to keep doing that, I would recommend group travel. I've done group travel and it's been really fun. That's, I think, my jam. So one of the first trips I took when I was solo was I signed on with a cycling trip through PEI. That's why I was flying to Charlottetown, because I was really into cycling at that point. I was doing a lot of cycling, at home, and I wanted to travel and do a cycling trip, but I was afraid to go alone just for safety's sake. If you wipe out on your bike and you're injured and you're alone, that's not so great. Or, if you get lost, the maps aren't good and you get lost. And that's a lot of hours every day to be on the bike by yourself. I just didn't think that would work for me. especially since, you know, if there's a problem with the bike, I could get stranded somewhere. So I went with a great company called Freewheeling Adventures, and they did everything for you. It was luxury. So not only do they book you in all of these beautiful bed and breakfasts all throughout PEI, which were wonderful places to stay, and they're, you know, the food that they prepared was really delicious. But this company, they would load up all the bikes on the van in the morning. They would drive us to our takeoff point that day on Confederation Trail. Then they would drive ahead to where we were going to stop for lunch. They would prepare all of lunch for us so that by the time we rolled in, they would be, you know, ready with the food for us to chow down. They were available by cell phone. If we had any bike issues, they would come and help, you know, tinker with the bike. If anybody had any physical, you know, issues that they wanted to stop riding early, they would come get you and take you back to the B&B in the van. In the afternoons, we did have downtime because we were riding like 60 to 80 kilometers a day. So that's, you know, just a half day. And so the properties that we were staying at were really nice for some R&R. The scenery was beautiful. Then there'd be happy hours in the bar, and you know, there were 12 to 15 people on that trip, so you get to know each other pretty quickly. It was a week-long trip, and then we would all sit together at a big table with lots of laughter and experiences to share and get to know one another. It's really, for me, it's the right way to go. I get companionship, but I also can be on my own if for some reason I'm not jiving with the people. And I get to spend meals with other people. So I really had a great time on that trip. Another group trip for me was a stand-up paddleboard and yoga retreat in Algonquin Park, just in northern Ontario. And there were lots of people there who were there to experience not only the joys of some physical activity and a great sort of, you know, pivot from their normal life to get away for a few days, but it was very relaxing. The people were friendly. It was an easy drive for me. I didn't have to get on a plane. It was fairly inexpensive. The food was absolutely delicious. I had a great time. That was a summer where I didn't have enough money to go anywhere far. So rather than just tell myself, oh, well, I can't afford to travel, I looked at what was fairly local to see what I could do, you know, shorter term, but still feel like I got away. If you're listening to me and you're thinking, well, I don't have anybody to ask for travel advice from, and I don't know where I'm going to get the information, and I can't trust anything that I read online. And that's true. I mean, you never know who's posting or why. But generally, I have found if you end up joining a few Facebook groups that are groups for people who travel, could even be particularly for people who are over 50 who are traveling. Sometimes if you join the retired Canadian groups, because, you know, people retire as early as 50. I even heard about somebody today who retired at 40, if you can believe it. If you stay on it long enough and you post the questions you want answers to, don't be shy. Just say, I'm traveling to such and such a place. Does anybody have a great hotel to recommend? Or, you know, has anybody used this company for group solo travel? I know that you can't trust everything word for word that's being said, but it gives you a little bit of a start in your research. And I've learned all kinds of really useful stuff from these groups. You just have to always follow up with your own research after the fact. One of the other ways to do group travel, which I had booked a trip on and then I had to cancel. It was a trip to Costa Rica, and unfortunately I had to cancel, but a friend of mine was going to be joining me, and so she decided to stay on with the trip and loved the company, loved the trip, and that's Road Scholar. And Road Scholar is one of those kind of learn and travel together companies. They run trips all over the world. It's very well known. They have single travel opportunities where you're not paying for the single supplement. And my friend had a blast. She was so glad that she went, and I was so disappointed that I had to cancel. My ex-husband has used G Adventures. They go all around the world too. They're very reputable. I know they're expensive, but he was going to Asia and felt a little nervous about going by himself and not being able to coordinate travel arrangements or figure out when he was in safe places and when he wasn't. So he was planning to travel to Asia for about 8 weeks. And so he did the first month with G Adventures and was so glad that he did it. He had a great time. I've heard other people say that they had great trips with Intrepid. I don't know much about Intrepid, but I would in the future look into Intrepid to see what it's like. These are all just pieces of information. I'm directing myself, this to the reluctant traveler who just is afraid to get that first step out the door and you're not sure what to do. Well, I mean, I don't know. I hope that somebody finds some of the points that I gave today useful. The thing I'd like to say about solo travel is, sometimes we're afraid to tell people that we're afraid to go somewhere by ourselves when we're in our 50s and 60s, because somehow we think that it's showing either a weakness or like a not quite being adult if you can't even go somewhere alone. But the truth of the matter is that lots of people, when they look back over all the experiences they had, never did it alone. And it's fine to feel uncomfortable or nervous about going somewhere alone. But I hope that you don't not ever go anywhere simply because you're going to have to go alone. If you'd rather go with people, do what I'm going to do. I'm just for now on going to book trips with groups. So many people travel that it's almost like if we haven't got that much experience, we want to kind of act like we're more confident than we are. But lots of people, the first few times they take their trips, are nervous. It's normal. And you know what I've noticed too? Is that sometimes when I do, in company of other travelers, mention that I kind of want to do something, but I don't think I want to do it by myself, they almost make me feel like kind of small for that. They almost, kind of smug about, their traveling experiences and how kind of dismissive of me letting it stop me. But then when I start asking them more questions about their own travel experiences, it turns out they don't travel alone. They're with other people. So I actually haven't seen them do it. So, if you feel like you're being put down either on, social media forums or with other people in your life, then turn it around and ask them more questions about their travel and then, find out how much they really are doing by themselves. Because I suspect that people who are veterans at solo travel aren't the ones that are making other people feel small about their worries or concerns. They've gone through it themselves. They've been there. They went through that stage. They'll give you lots of encouraging information, but they won't make you feel small about it. So ignore anybody who's making you feel like kind of like a child because you can't do things on your own. There's so many adults who have never sat in a restaurant by themselves, never gone to a concert and bought a ticket by themselves, never gone to a movie alone. That is very common, that people, even at our age, have never done that. If you've traveled solo in the past, if you wouldn't mind sharing some of your experiences here, then we can all learn from one another and encourage each other, especially if you found an awesome group travel company in Canada or great hacks for getting good deals. Let us know. At any rate, this is Michelle at Solo in Canada, Musings from Midlife. I'm going to sign off now. Don't forget that I also have a blog at www.soloincanada.ca, And I hope you enjoy my content. Have a great day.